Welcome to True Echo, where real stories echo louder than fiction. Today's story will shake you. A 13-year-old black boy walks into a bank with birthday money, and walks out in handcuffs. But when the cops discover who his father is, the truth explodes. This isn't just a case of mistaken identity. It's a brutal reflection of a system still drenched in prejudice. But what happened next stunned the entire city, and turned shame into reform. Stay with us. You're about to witness one of the most powerful takedowns in banking history. The sun was high and golden on the day that Jaden Bennett stepped off the city bus in front of First National Bank. He was only 13, but he walked like a young man with purpose. His sneakers were clean, his button-down shirt neatly pressed. In his small backpack was a carefully packed envelope containing $800, a birthday gift from his grandmother and his own savings from helping his father, Michael Bennett, around the house. To anyone else, it was a simple, meaningful rite of passage, a boy opening his first bank account. But in Jaden's heart, it was something bigger, proof he was responsible, that he was growing up. He'd spent the last week researching what documents to bring, watching videos on YouTube about interest rates, and even rehearsing how he would speak at the teller window. He walked through the bank's tall glass doors, chest rising with quiet pride. The marble floor, the gleaming counters, the quiet hum of money being moved, it all made the moment feel official. He got in line, gripping the envelope tightly. He didn't know yet that in just a few minutes, the same envelope would spark chaos. And that a single look from a bank manager would turn his dream into a nightmare. When Jaden reached the counter, he smiled at the teller, a white woman named Lisa Edwards. She had just laughed warmly with the customer ahead of him, but when she saw Jaden, her smile dropped like a brick. Her eyes swept over him slowly, then narrowed. "What do you want?" she asked bluntly. Caught off guard, Jaden still smiled and said politely, "Hi, I'd like to open my first bank account. I brought everything I need." He placed the envelope and his documents on the counter, student ID, birth certificate, and a letter from his father. Lisa didn't touch them. She didn't look at them. She only stared at the cash, her lip curling. "Where'd you get this kind of money?" she asked, suspicion oozing from every word. "It's my birthday money," Jaden said. "From my grandma. And some is from doing chores. I saved." Lisa cut him off with a cruel laugh. "Right. Birthday money. Sure." The comment stung. Jaden felt his cheeks flush. But he stayed composed. "It's true. I've been planning this for weeks. You know," she said, stepping back, "I know exactly where kids like you get money. You think we're stupid?" Jaden's heart dropped. The people in line behind him had grown quiet. Some looked away. Others stared. "I haven't done anything wrong," he said, voice trembling. "Please, you can look at my documents." Lisa didn't budge. "Don't lie. This looks like drug money to me. I'm calling my manager." Jaden's hands shook. This was supposed to be a proud day. Now, strangers were watching him like he was a criminal. As Lisa dialed an extension, Jaden stood frozen, his dignity unraveling. Moments later, the bank's senior manager, Karen Mitchell, stepped out of her office. She walked briskly across the marble floor, high heels echoing like gunshots. Karen was a name people in the city whispered about, strict, unshakable, and rumored to have a certain attitude. Lisa spoke first. "This boy has $800 in cash. Says it's a gift. I don't believe it. He got cagey when I asked where it came from." Karen looked Jaden up and down, lips tightening. "This kid?" she asked. "This is suspicious as hell." Jaden opened his mouth to protest, to beg her to look at his documents. But Karen didn't want documents. She wanted control. "Call the police," she said coldly. "We don't have time for games." I can call my dad," Jaden said quickly. "Please, just let me call my dad." Karen smirked. What's he going to say? That you're a little angel? I don't think so. She reached over the counter, snatched Jaden's phone before he could unlock it, and turned away. Outside, the city carried on as usual. Inside the bank, a child's innocence was being crushed under the weight of ignorance and power. Karen Mitchell's voice was cold and decisive as she lifted the phone and dialed. Yes, I need officers dispatched to First National Bank. A suspicious black male, possibly involved in theft, tried to open an account using what we believe is illegal cash. He's uncooperative and possibly dangerous. Each word she said was a dagger. Jaden stood completely still, his breath shallow, his heart racing faster than it ever had. The humiliation stung worse than anything he'd felt in his life. People whispered. Some customers looked uncomfortable. But no one said a word in his defense. Karen turned back to him with the smugness of someone who believed herself invincible. You'll explain it all to the cops, she sneered. And we'll see what your dad has to say then. Jaden wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. But instead, he clenched his fists. He had done nothing wrong. He knew that. And if there was one thing his father taught him, it was to hold your head high, even when the world tries to knock it off your shoulders. Minutes passed like hours. Then, through the glass doors, two police officers walked in, Officer Travis Walsh, tall, pale, ex-military posture, and Officer Amanda Cruz, young, stone-faced, and unreadable. They scanned the room, and it didn't take long before Karen pointed directly at Jaden. There. That's him, she declared. He's got $800 in cash, no guardian, and started getting aggressive when I questioned him. Aggressive? Jaden hadn't raised his voice once. He'd only asked to speak to his dad. Officer Walsh walked up, his face unreadable. You, kid, turn around. Hands behind your back. What? No. Please. I didn't steal anything. Jaden's voice cracked in desperation. That money is mine. I just wanted to open a bank account. My grandma. Turn around, Walsh said again, now harsher. Amanda Cruz, silent until now, stepped forward with the handcuffs ready. I need to call my dad. Jaden cried. Please, just let me. You can explain it at the station, Walsh snapped. Then, without another word, they spun him around, ignoring the envelope of documents still sitting on the counter. The cold click of the handcuffs sliced through the air like a blade. Jaden winced, not from pain, but from pure, searing humiliation. His face burned with shame. And still, no one spoke. Customers looked away. One woman pulled out her phone but didn't press record. Another father shielded his son's eyes as if Jaden were a threat. Karen folded her arms with quiet satisfaction. The officers led Jaden through the bank like a criminal. The front doors opened. The world outside had no idea what injustice had just walked through them. Jaden was shoved into the back of the squad car, tears falling silently as the doors slammed shut. But as the car pulled away, something inside him stirred. A final flicker of hope. He remembered, his phone. Karen had taken one, but he kept a backup, a second phone, small and old, zipped in the inside pocket of his hoodie. His father insisted he keep it just in case. With trembling fingers and his hands awkwardly cuffed behind him, Jaden twisted until he could reach it. He slid it out and used his thumb to send one desperate text. Dad. I'm in trouble. First National Bank. They called the cops. Said I stole my birthday money. Please help me. I'm scared. He hit send. Seconds later, Amanda Cruz glanced into the rearview mirror. What's he doing back there? Walsh pulled the car over immediately. Phone, he barked. You had another phone. He yanked open the back door, grabbed it from Jaden's hand, and read the message. Great, he muttered. He called Daddy. But what neither officer realized was that Daddy wasn't just any father. The man who just received that text was the storm that would tear through everything they thought they knew. In a sleek skyscraper across town, atop the glass-paneled headquarters of the Bennett Group, a major multinational investment and tech conglomerate, Dr. Michael Bennett sat in a high-level boardroom with some of the most powerful executives in the country. Mid-discussion about a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, his phone buzzed. He almost didn't check it, he rarely did during meetings. But something pulled him to glance. When he saw the name, Jaden, his world stopped. He read the message once. Then twice. Then a third time. The men and women seated around the table, titans of industry, fell silent as they watched the expression on Michael Bennett's face change from calm to something terrifying. Without a word, he stood. The room froze. Meeting adjourned, he said flatly. Something's happened to my son. One brave executive, an old friend, asked gently, Michael, what is it? Michael's jaw clenched. They arrested him. At First National. The room gasped. Someone whispered, why? Michael looked him dead in the eye. For trying to open a bank account. Then he walked out. Outside the glass doors of the boardroom, his assistant was already on the phone with his lawyer and head of security. His driver had the car waiting. And within minutes, 3 black SUVs peeled out of the underground garage, racing across the city toward First National Bank. Inside the squad car, Jaden sat shaking. The officers had taken his backup phone. He didn't know if his dad had seen the message. But what he didn't know was that the storm had already begun, and it was headed straight for the bank that had dared to treat Michael Bennett's son like a criminal. The black SUV screeched to a smooth halt outside First National Bank. Its tinted windows reflected the crowd gathering near the front, murmuring about the squad car that had just taken a boy away in handcuffs. The doors opened slowly, deliberately, one by one. Brian Scott, a tall, imposing man with the quiet authority of a former police captain, stepped out first. His expression was unreadable, his tailored black suit crisp, his presence demanding attention. Then came Daniel Cooper, sharp-eyed attorney with a lethal courtroom reputation. Beside him, 2 elite members of Michael Bennett's private security detail moved in sync, scanning the area with clinical precision. And finally, the man himself. Dr. Michael Bennett. His charcoal gray suit was perfectly pressed. His silver-threaded hair looked sculpted by time and power. And his expression, cold as granite, forged in fury and heartbreak, was that of a man who had built empires and now stood ready to burn them down for his son. Every conversation near the bank's front door died as he walked through it. Inside, the lobby still buzzed faintly with whispers and awkward glances. Customers remained tense from the earlier commotion. Lisa Edwards, the teller who first escalated the situation, stood stiffly behind her window, pretending to be busy. Karen Mitchell, smug just moments ago, emerged from her office, her stride slowing when her eyes locked on the man heading straight toward her. Good afternoon, sir, she said with practiced cheer. Can I help you? Michael stopped, standing tall in front of her. I'm Dr. Michael Bennett, he said, voice low but razor-sharp. Where is my son? Karen blinked. Her stomach dropped. The name hit her like a hammer. Your son, she repeated, throat tightening. Who? Michael's eyes narrowed. Jaden Bennett. 13. You had him arrested. Karen's breath caught. Wait, he's your son. Before she could say more, Michael stepped closer. You humiliated a child. You accused him of a crime without evidence. You called the police before reviewing documents he spent days preparing. He turned to Lisa Edwards, who now looked pale and stricken. You both treated him like a criminal. You never stopped to ask why a young black boy with a clean envelope full of cash might walk into a bank. You assumed. You profiled. And you broke him. Lisa stammered. I didn't know. That doesn't make it better, Michael snapped. It makes it worse. You didn't know because you didn't care to. Karen tried to reassert her authority, puffing herself up with false confidence. Dr. Bennett, this is a misunderstanding. We acted based on our protocols. Any child with that much money would raise questions. You didn't treat him like any child, Michael said darkly. You treated him like that kind of child. He leaned closer. I own a controlling stake in First National Bank. Karen froze. Her breath vanished. Michael raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Brian Scott immediately stepped forward, handed him a sealed folder, and opened a tablet showing the bank's organizational chart. Michael held it up in front of Karen's stunned face. Effective immediately, he said, you are placed on suspension pending an investigation. Karen's knees buckled slightly. You don't have the authority to. I have every authority, Michael said sharply. You called the police on my son. Now I'm calling judgment on you. Karen turned white. Just then, the front doors of the bank opened again. Chairman Richard Morrison entered, First National Bank's highest-ranking official and one of Michael's oldest associates. His usually calm demeanor was shaken. He approached Michael directly. I just got the call. I reviewed the footage. I saw everything. Michael, I am deeply sorry. Michael nodded slightly but didn't soften. Then you know what needs to be done. Richard turned to Karen. Miss Mitchell, until further notice, you are relieved of your duties. Pack your belongings. You will be escorted out. Karen looked stunned. This is a witch hunt. But even the security guards who had always nodded respectfully at her didn't move. Her authority had evaporated. Michael wasn't finished. He turned to Daniel Cooper. I want a formal statement from this branch to the press within the next hour. I want disciplinary measures drafted. And I want the surveillance footage preserved and reviewed by my team personally. Daniel nodded. Already in progress. Michael's voice grew heavier, colder. And most importantly, where is my son? Lisa pointed meekly toward the phone. He was taken by officers Walsh and Cruz, 20 minutes ago. Michael didn't flinch. He pulled out his phone. Samuel, he said, addressing his assistant, get me the police commissioner. Now. He hung up and turned to Brian Scott. I want my son found in the next 10 minutes. I don't care what it takes. Across town, in the back of a now silent squad car, Jaden sat in the parking lot of the precinct. The two officers had said almost nothing since pulling away from the bank. Amanda Cruz scrolled through her phone. Walsh chewed on a protein bar. Jaden stared out the window, trying to hold it together. His wrists still hurt. His throat was dry. Then, a sudden loud knock on the driver's side window. Officer Walsh turned, and jumped in his seat when he saw the face staring back at him. It was Brian Scott. Beside him stood two more security operatives and Daniel Cooper, looking deadly serious. Brian held up a phone. Uncuff him. Now. Walsh frowned. Under what? Now, Brian repeated. Unless you want this city to see your face on every major news outlet by tonight. Behind them, a black SUV pulled up. Michael Bennett stepped out. When Jaden saw his father, something inside him broke. Not from pain, but from relief. Michael opened the back door himself and gently pulled Jaden out. I'm here, he whispered, holding his son tightly. You're safe now. Jaden buried his face in his father's chest, sobbing. I didn't do anything wrong, Dad. I swear. Michael hugged him harder. I know, son. I know. The officers stood frozen, watching the scene. Then Michael turned to them. His face was like a thundercloud. This isn't over, he said. And they knew he meant it. By the time Michael Bennett and Jaden returned home that night, the story had already begun to spread. It started with a few tweets, angry whispers from bystanders who'd witnessed the scene at the bank. Then someone posted a blurry clip of Jaden being led away in handcuffs, his face full of confusion and shame. Within hours, the hashtags were trending. Hashtag justice for Jaden. Hashtag banking while black. Hashtag first national scandal. The footage was raw, but the emotion was undeniable. A 13-year-old boy arrested for trying to deposit his birthday money. Michael stood in his study, scrolling through his phone while Jaden sat curled on the living room couch, a blanket over his shoulders. Amanda Bennett, Michael's wife and Jaden's mother, knelt beside him, stroking his curls softly. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. "None of this was your fault." Jaden didn't speak. He just nodded slightly, but the redness in his eyes said everything. Michael took a deep breath. Then he turned to Amanda. "We can't just let this pass, Mandy. This can't be another news cycle. It has to be a reckoning." Amanda stood and faced him. "Then let's start by holding the bank accountable. And the officers. And everyone who stood by and watched it happen." And that's exactly what they did. The next morning, Michael returned to First National, not just as a father seeking justice, but as the bank's largest shareholder. He demanded a full review of the security footage and called for an emergency board meeting. Chairman Richard Morrison, still shaken from what he'd seen, wasted no time in backing him. Within the hour, Karen Mitchell's termination was announced publicly. Lisa Edwards was placed under investigation and suspended without pay. Michael stepped in front of cameras for the first time in months, holding a short press conference on the steps of First National's headquarters. The media gathered quickly, microphones thrust forward, eager to hear from the man whose son had become a national symbol overnight. "My son walked into a bank carrying his dreams in an envelope," Michael said. "What he got in return was humiliation, profiling, and unnecessary trauma. This isn't just about Jaden. This is about every black child who's ever been told they don't belong. That they're a threat. That their very presence is suspicious." He paused. "Let me be clear, I'm not here to ruin reputations. I'm here to demand accountability. And change." When the press asked what that change looked like, Michael didn't hesitate. New hiring protocols. Mandatory anti-bias training. Stronger policies for how staff interact with minors and marginalized communities. This bank, and this city, will not be the same when I'm done. He turned and left before questions could be asked. But he wasn't finished. That same afternoon, the footage of the arrest was released publicly with the consent of the Bennett family. It showed everything, from Lisa's smirk as she rejected Jaden's documents, to Karen yanking the phone from his hand, to the way the officers cuffed him without a word. Public outrage exploded. Civil rights leaders spoke out. Celebrities posted Jaden's story. School teachers across the country used it in class to talk about racism and prejudice. Karen Mitchell, meanwhile, found herself thrust into a storm of media scrutiny and condemnation. Paparazzi camped outside her suburban home. Her neighbors stopped speaking to her. Protesters appeared outside her front door with signs reading, "Do you believe us now?" and "Jaden is every child." She tried issuing a statement, blaming stress, a misunderstanding, and claiming she didn't know he was the CEO's son. But that only made things worse. Because, as the world soon pointed out, why would that even matter? The heat didn't stop with Karen. By week's end, the police department was under investigation too. Security footage showed the officers making no attempt to review Jaden's documents before detaining him. The public demanded action. Under mounting pressure, Police Chief Robert Phillips addressed the city in a nationally broadcast press conference. He looked weary but resolute. "What happened to Jaden Bennett is not acceptable," he said. Officers Walsh and Cruz acted inappropriately and failed to follow basic procedure. They've been placed on indefinite suspension pending an internal affairs investigation. We are also reviewing all training programs to ensure incidents like this never happen again. That same day, Michael Bennett announced the launch of a new nonprofit, the Equal Rights Initiative, focused on combating racial bias in financial institutions and empowering young people of color through financial literacy education. Its first spokesperson, Jaden Bennett. Though still shaken by the experience, Jaden stood on stage next to his father a week later at a youth conference packed with teenagers, parents, educators, and activists. He spoke into the microphone with a voice still soft, but full of quiet strength. "My name is Jaden Bennett. I'm 13 years old. I went to open a bank account because I wanted to take responsibility for my future. But instead of being treated with respect, I was treated like a threat. Not because of what I did, but because of what I looked like." He paused, looked out at the crowd, and said, "But I'm not going to let that break me. I want every kid who looks like me to know, you're not wrong for wanting to be something. You belong here. And we're going to make sure you never forget it." The audience rose to its feet in a standing ovation. Even Michael, usually so composed, wiped a tear from his eye. In that moment, Jaden wasn't just the boy who'd been arrested. He was the boy who stood back up, and demanded change. The national attention didn't fade. In fact, it intensified. Major news networks picked up the story, turning Jaden's name into a rallying cry. Talk shows discussed systemic racism in banking. Social media was flooded with commentary, solidarity, and questions. How many Jaden Bennetts are there? How many never get the chance to speak out? Soon, the Equal Rights Initiative became more than just a foundation, it became a movement. Donations poured in from across the country. Parents shared stories of their own children being profiled in schools, stores, or simply walking down the street. Influencers and activists joined forces with Michael and Amanda Bennett to push for legislative reform aimed at preventing racial profiling, especially of minors, in both law enforcement and the private sector. Meanwhile, the internal investigation at First National Bank, led by Chairman Richard Morrison, uncovered a disturbing pattern. Over the past 5 years, minority clients, particularly young black males, were 5 times more likely to be flagged for suspicious activity by bank employees, despite no criminal history or actual violations. The board was shaken. Immediate steps were taken. Karen Mitchell's termination was made permanent and public. Lisa Edwards' employment was terminated, and she was barred from working in any financial institution governed by the state's Financial Ethics Board. Every employee at First National, across all branches, was required to complete new cultural sensitivity, anti-bias, and child protection training. New signage was added to every branch entrance: all customers welcome. No bias. No exceptions. But despite these sweeping changes, not everyone was pleased. There were voices, quiet at first, then louder, accusing Michael Bennett of weaponizing influence, of overreacting, or bringing down hardworking professionals for one mistake. On a conservative podcast, a well-known pundit called Jaden's story a PR stunt gone too far. Michael responded not with anger, but with clarity. He appeared in a televised interview with a calm, direct message. When a child is humiliated, arrested, and profiled, that's not a PR issue. That's a human issue. I didn't bring anyone down. They brought themselves down, with their arrogance, their prejudice, and their refusal to simply look at a boy and see a boy. Not a suspect. The clip went viral. Millions watched, shared, and commented. It wasn't just Michael's wealth or power that captivated the public, it was the precision with which he exposed the quiet rot that often hides behind professionalism. And Jaden, once again, found himself at the center of a conversation he never asked to be part of. But this time, it was different. He walked through school hallways no longer a quiet kid, but a symbol of courage. Teachers approached him with pride. Students asked him to sign their equal rights brochures. Journalists called him a young hero. And yet, at home, Jaden remained the same boy. Soft-spoken. Thoughtful. A little overwhelmed, but not bitter. Still clutching that same envelope of birthday money, now tucked in a fireproof safe next to his father's awards. One night, as Michael tucked him into bed, a rare thing in the chaos of their new reality, Jaden asked, "Do you think they would have treated me differently, if they knew I was your son?" Michael paused. "Maybe," he said honestly. "But that's not the point." He sat on the edge of the bed, voice steady. "Jaden, they shouldn't have to know who your father is to treat you with respect. You deserve that just by being you. And the real change we're fighting for. It's for the day when no black kid has to prove they belong. Not with a parent's name. Not with a suit. Not with perfect papers. Just by being human." Jaden nodded slowly. "I want to help make that world," he said. Michael smiled. "You already are." That weekend, Jaden was invited to speak at a youth summit hosted by the city. It was packed with kids his age, police officials, city council members, and educators. The mayor introduced him personally. And when Jaden stepped up to the microphone, dressed in a blazer his dad had tailored just for him, he didn't stammer. He didn't hesitate. He told his story. But he didn't focus on the handcuffs. He focused on the lesson. "There were a lot of people who looked at me and saw a problem," he said. "But I've learned something. When people treat you like you don't belong, it's not because of who you are. It's because of who they're afraid you'll become." The crowd applauded. "I'm not afraid to become someone who speaks up. I'm not afraid to become someone who changes things. And I'm definitely not afraid to say, I belong." From the back of the room, Michael and Amanda stood side by side, clapping with pride. Michael whispered to his wife, "He's stronger than I ever was at that age." Amanda smiled, tears in her eyes. "He's stronger than most people ever become." The events surrounding Jaden Bennett had now become more than a news cycle. They'd become a movement, one that stirred emotion, forced institutional change, and placed a spotlight on injustice in places many once thought immune to scrutiny. But as the national buzz continued, a deeper, quieter ripple spread through the lives of those most responsible for what happened that day. Karen Mitchell had disappeared from public view. After her termination, her name and face had been splashed across every major media outlet in the country. Her former colleagues refused to speak to her. Her LinkedIn was flooded with angry comments. Her phone stopped ringing, not a single offer, not even from second-tier firms. And the media wasn't done with her. A national journalist ran an investigative exposé on racial discrimination in banking, highlighting Karen's pattern of behavior. Testimonies from former employees and clients began to emerge. People who had kept silent for years now felt empowered to speak. It turned out Jaden wasn't the first. But he was the last. Karen's descent into obscurity was rapid and unforgiving. She tried issuing apologies. None were accepted. She tried pivoting to victimhood. It backfired. Public opinion had already judged her, and this time, justice wasn't hiding behind professional titles or corporate silence. Lisa Edwards, the teller who had first profiled Jaden, faced her own reckoning. The bank released her after discovering multiple complaints filed against her over the years, complaints that had been quietly dismissed or buried. When confronted by reporters, she broke down on camera and claimed she'd never meant to hurt the boy. But intentions no longer held weight. She faded into a kind of public invisibility. Not fired for one mistake, but held accountable for a legacy of them. And the officers? Travis Walsh and Amanda Cruz both faced disciplinary hearings after the internal affairs investigation revealed they had violated protocol, not just with Jaden, but in several other undocumented instances. Officer Walsh was forced into early retirement with a tarnished record. Amanda Cruz was suspended without pay and required to complete months of anti-bias and juvenile de-escalation training. Public trust in their department had plummeted, and it was clear that symbolic punishment wouldn't be enough this time. Chief Robert Phillips, under pressure, enacted sweeping reforms. A new community police youth engagement initiative launched. Officers were required to undergo quarterly training focused on implicit bias, youth rights, and culturally sensitive responses. But more importantly, for the first time in department history, a review panel made up of community leaders, including members from Jayden's Equal Rights Initiative, was granted oversight power in juvenile arrests and profiling complaints. It wasn't just change, it was accountability written into policy. But amid all the political fallout and social restructuring, Jayden's life changed most of all. Though hailed as a voice for justice, he struggled with the quiet aftermath. The nights when he'd wake up sweating, heart racing, dreaming of cold metal cuffs on his wrists. The way his stomach twisted every time he passed a police car. The trust in adults, that once innate belief that grown-ups would protect him, had been fractured. Michael and Amanda knew they couldn't fix that with speeches or foundation launches. They got Jayden into counseling, brought in trauma specialists, gave him space. They also did something rare for a family so public. They stopped. No more press for a while. No more events. Just family dinners. Weekend games. Conversations that didn't revolve around race or media or movements. Just moments to remember what being 13 was supposed to feel like. And slowly, something began to heal. Jayden returned to his regular school schedule. He rejoined the chess club. He started drawing again, sketches of superheroes and cities and futures that still shimmered with possibility. He began mentoring younger kids at the community center, not because someone asked him to, but because he wanted to. One afternoon, Michael walked in to find Jayden at the dining room table helping an 11-year-old boy count out coins and bills into small envelopes. "What's all this?" Michael asked with a smile. "We're pretending to open bank accounts," Jayden said without looking up. "I'm showing them how to organize their money. And how to speak up if someone doesn't treat them right." Michael stood quietly for a moment. And in that moment, he realized something powerful: his son hadn't just survived injustice. He had transformed it. By late spring, the Equal Rights Initiative had grown from a startup nonprofit to a national movement with chapters in 42 states. Its programs were being implemented in over 300 schools and youth organizations. Banks and police departments across the country requested partnership packages to integrate its materials into their employee training. And Jayden, now more confident, more grounded, appeared once again on a national platform, this time not as a victim, but as a changemaker. Standing in front of a packed auditorium at the National Youth Empowerment Summit, he delivered a speech that would later be quoted by senators, educators, and even the president. "I didn't choose what happened to me," he said. "But I choose what I do with it." He looked out over the audience, young and old, black and white, hopeful and hurt. "I was handcuffed once. But I refuse to live in chains." A beat of silence. Then thunderous applause. In the crowd, Michael and Amanda stood together, hands clasped tightly. What had started as a moment of trauma had become a story of power. Their son was no longer just a boy at a bank. He was a boy who built a movement. And in doing so, he taught a nation what true value really looks like. Months later, on a quiet summer evening, Jayden Bennett sat on the rooftop terrace of his family's home, looking out at the glowing skyline. The noise of the world had quieted, the headlines shifted, but his life would never be the same. Beside him, the fire pit crackled gently. Michael approached, 2 mugs of hot cocoa in hand, one topped with extra marshmallows, just how Jayden liked it. "Still thinking about everything?" Michael asked, handing over the mug. Jayden nodded. "Yeah. Sometimes it feels like it all happened to someone else." Michael smiled gently. "That's because you've grown. You're not the same kid who walked into that bank. And you never will be again." Jayden was quiet for a moment, then said, "I think that's what hurts the most. I didn't ask for any of it. I just wanted to open a bank account." He took a sip. "Now I know things I wish I didn't." Michael turned toward his son. "And yet, you used what happened to change the world." Most grown men wouldn't have handled it with half the grace you did. Jaden looked down at the marshmallows melting into his cocoa. Sometimes, I just miss being invisible. His father's voice softened. I get it. But the truth is, kids like you don't get to be invisible. That's why your voice matters so much. Across the city, First National Bank looked different now. Branches had revamped their layouts to include dedicated youth service windows. Walls were adorned with posters featuring diverse customers. A framed photo of Jaden speaking at the youth summit hung in the headquarters lobby, not as a symbol of shame, but as a commitment, a reminder that even billion-dollar institutions must answer to justice. Chairman Richard Morrison had implemented sweeping changes, crediting the Bennett family for forcing long-overdue introspection. Sometimes, he said during an interview, it takes a child's pain to reveal an adult's blindness. At the same time, schools across the country had adopted the Equal Rights Initiative's curriculum. Teens were learning about financial literacy, advocacy, and how to recognize and challenge prejudice. What had started as one boy's horror story had become a blueprint for empowering a generation. And behind it all, Jaden remained the quiet force moving hearts. He didn't crave the spotlight, but it kept finding him. A documentary filmmaker reached out to the family and created a powerful short film called Just a Deposit, which premiered at a youth film festival and won a national award. Jaden agreed to participate on one condition, that all proceeds go toward scholarships for kids from underserved neighborhoods to start their own savings accounts. And the initiative didn't stop with Jaden. Inspired by their son's courage, Michael and Amanda expanded their mission. They pushed for legislative reform, lobbying for federal protections against racial profiling in financial institutions. Within a year, the Bennett Youth Fair Banking Act passed its first major vote, backed by both sides of the political aisle. At a press conference celebrating the milestone, a reporter asked Michael what the most important moment had been in all of it. Michael paused. It wasn't the press conference, he said. Or the termination. Or the settlement. It was when I saw my son, 13 years old, stand on a stage and tell the world he belonged. That's the moment I knew we'd already won. Back at home, Jaden sat beside his dad and stared up at the stars. Do you think it's really over? He asked. Michael glanced toward him. No, he said. The work's just beginning. But the worst of it? That's behind you. You turned pain into power. Jaden gave a small smile. I just don't want another kid to feel like I did that day. And because of you, Michael said quietly, millions won't. Sometimes it takes a single moment to shatter your faith in the world. And sometimes, that moment becomes the spark that changes everything. Jaden Bennett didn't just survive injustice, he rose above it, transformed it, and forced institutions to change with him. His courage reminded us all, real power isn't about wealth or titles, it's about standing firm when everything tries to push you down. And that is the power of one voice. One boy. One truth. We are True Echo, where real stories ripple through time. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they matter. And remember, you don't have to be powerful to create change. You just have to be brave.